Before the world was clothed in form, before mountains rose or stars learned their names, there existed a silent mechanism humming beneath creation, a secret rhythm, older than time, hidden in plain sight. Those who discovered it did not shout it from mountaintops. They whispered it in temples, encoded it in symbols, and carried it in their breath like a sacred fire. What you are about to hear is not a teaching, but a remembering. For deep within you lies a switch, an invisible lever that, once understood, bends the threads of reality in your favor. This mechanism does not obey effort, logic, or force. It responds only to alignment, to awareness, to the quiet certainty of the soul awakening to its own power. As you listen, you may feel something shifting. Subtle at first, like a curtain stirring before the wind enters the room. You may sense the universe leaning closer, rearranging people, opportunities, and moments with uncanny precision. This is no accident. It is the hidden machinery of existence responding to your unfolding remembrance. What follows is forbidden to the unready, yet familiar to the soul that has waited many lifetimes for this moment. Listen closely, but tell no one. Chapter 1. The Switch Beneath Reality. In a forgotten district of an old city where cobblestones still held the echoes of countless footsteps, there lived a quiet watchmaker named Elias. His workshop was tucked between two weathered buildings, easily overlooked by hurried passers-by. Dusty gears and scattered tools filled his shelves, but among them all, there was one object he handled with unusual reverence. A small brass pocket watch unlike any other. This watch, worn by time and touched by countless stories, had been passed down for generations. Its glass was faintly cracked, its metal tarnished by age, yet it possessed a mysterious mechanism buried deep within its core, one that Elias could never find in any textbook or master's manual. Every time he opened it, he found its inner structure subtly altered, as though the watch rearranged itself when unobserved. He felt, without knowing how, that this watch held a secret the world had long forgotten. One evening, as rain whispered against the window panes, Elias worked diligently under the soft glow of a single oil lamp. The streets outside were empty, the world wrapped in a blanket of quiet. When he opened the watch again, he noticed something astonishing. Behind the familiar gears, another component shimmered, a tiny lever, hidden until now, glinting like it had been waiting for him to notice. He reached toward it cautiously, sensing that this was not simply a mechanical piece, but something far more profound. The moment his fingertip brushed it, the room rippled, not visually, but vibrationally. The air thickened, the lamp flickered, and Elias felt as though he were simultaneously standing in his shop and nowhere at all. The small lever clicked into place with an almost ceremonial finality, and suddenly the world shifted. The watch in his palm grew warm, pulsing like a living heart. The rain outside ceased instantly. The silence deepened, not in emptiness, but in anticipation. Elias felt a presence, not a person, but a knowing, settle into the room like a patient teacher finally acknowledged. In that suspended moment, a truth dawned with crystalline clarity. Reality is not moved by effort. Reality is moved by alignment. Elias realized the hidden switch inside the watch was not controlling the watch, it was mirroring the switch inside himself. When he touched it, he wasn't manipulating gears. He was activating awareness. His perception shifted, and as it did, the world around him rearranged to match it. This is the mechanism ancient mystics once understood, a silent gear within consciousness that, when recognized, begins to turn of its own accord. Not through force, not through willpower, but through remembrance. Elias stepped outside and witnessed the city transformed. The lanterns glowed brighter, shadows softened, and strangers passing by moved with an uncanny synchronicity, as though responding to a rhythm only he could hear. Opportunities he had long tried to force into existence suddenly appeared with ease. Customers he hadn't seen in months arrived with renewed interest. A letter offering an apprenticeship had been slipped under his door, though he never applied. Nothing was random. Everything was rearranging around him. Not because he had changed the world, but because he had changed the world he was attuned to. This is the hidden switch beneath reality. Your internal state determines which version of the external world you step into. Most people attempt to move their circumstances the way one might push heavy furniture across a stubborn floor, straining against the weight of their own dense beliefs. They do not realize that outcomes are not objects to be shoved into place, but shadows cast by their internal stance. Change the stance, and the shadows move naturally. This is why the watchmaker's discovery mattered. It was never about the watch. It was about what the watch had been teaching him all along. Within every person lies a small unseen lever, easily overlooked yet infinitely powerful. When left untouched, life moves according to old assumptions, worn-out beliefs, and inherited limitations. But when recognized, truly recognized, that lever shifts and reality rearranges to match the new frequency being broadcast. Not gradually, not reluctantly, but immediately in the unseen realm, and then visibly through synchronicity, opportunity, reconfiguration, and divine timing. Elias spent the next days moving through his life with a newfound awareness. Instead of efforting through each task, he allowed an internal alignment to guide his steps. He observed a strange phenomenon. The less he forced, the more the universe responded. Events that once felt disconnected began weaving themselves into perfect sequences. Problems dissolved before arising. People arrived at precisely the right moments with precisely the right words. He realized that life was not happening to him, life was happening through him. The hidden mechanism had always been there, humming beneath reality like a soft drumbeat, waiting patiently for him to notice. And now you stand where Elias once stood, before the unseen lever inside your own consciousness. The question is not whether the mechanism exists. The question is whether you are ready to remember how to activate it. Ancient practice, the inner lever ritual. Tonight, sit in stillness. Place your hand over your heart. Close your eyes and envision a small switch deep inside your being, a lever representing your alignment with the reality you desire. Whisper gently, I shift from forcing to allowing. I shift from effort to alignment. I shift into the reality already waiting for me. Feel the internal click, the energetic reorientation. The universe will feel it too, and it will begin to rearrange itself accordingly. Chapter 2. The ripple behind your thoughts. Long before modern cities rose from the ground, before clocks divided time into measurable slices, there lived a poet named Soren who wandered the hills of his homeland searching for truth. Unlike others, he did not seek wisdom in temples or scrolls. He believed the universe spoke most clearly in silent places, in the space between breaths, in the pause between waves, in the stillness where thinking falls away. One misty morning, Soren came upon a vast lake so calm it reflected the sky with perfect clarity. He noticed something peculiar. Whenever he tossed a pebble into the water, the ripple it created traveled much farther than seemed reasonable, as if the lake magnified even the smallest disturbance into something immense. He sat by the water for hours, experimenting with tiny stones, twigs, and specks of sand. Every movement, however insignificant, created lasting, expanding rings that touched every part of the lake's surface. In that moment, an ancient truth revealed itself to him. Your thoughts are not confined to your mind. They are stones dropped into the vast lake of reality. Each thought sends a ripple through the unseen field that shapes circumstance, emotion, and experience. Most people believe their thoughts remain private, harmless, or inconsequential. But the universe responds not to words or actions alone. It responds to the vibration beneath them, and vibration is the ripple maker. Soren realized something even more profound. When he tossed a pebble with intention, with a clear emotion behind it, the ripples traveled differently. They became stronger, more coherent, more forceful in their organization. Negative emotions created jagged waves that collided chaotically, distorting the reflection on the lake's surface. But when he tossed a pebble while embodying gratitude or serenity, the ripples moved in harmonious patterns, aligning with one another to create a gentle, expanding beauty. This mirrored the silent architecture of creation itself. Your thoughts do not shape reality. The vibration behind your thoughts does. Later that afternoon, a young traveler approached Soren asking for guidance. She had spent years reciting affirmations, chanting mantras, and filling journals with desires, yet her life remained unchanged. She asked why the universe seemed deaf to her efforts. Soren handed her a pebble. "Throw it into the lake," he said. She did. The ripple expanded outward, touching shores she couldn't even see. "This is your thought," he explained. "It always makes an impact." He handed her a second pebble. "Now, throw this one, but first fill yourself with frustration." She hesitated, then complied. The ripple was jagged, disordered, quickly dissolving into turbulence. "This is your thought with contradiction," Soren continued. "Words say one thing, emotion says another. The universe hears the vibration, not the vocabulary." Finally, he handed her a third pebble. "This time," he whispered, "fill yourself with the feeling of already having what you seek." The woman closed her eyes. Her breath softened, her face relaxed. When she cast the pebble, the ripple glided across the surface like a blessing whispered into existence. "The lake always responds," Soren said. "So does the universe." A great understanding dawned within her. Your emotional frequency is the true request you send into existence. Not the sentences you speak, not the goals you write, not the desires you articulate. Soren explained that most people create vibrational contradictions without realizing it. They think abundance while vibrating scarcity. They speak love while vibrating fear. They declare confidence while vibrating doubt. The universe does not judge this mismatch. It simply mirrors it. Your inner state is the silent architect of your external experience. Even silence emits ripples. Soren taught her the principle that would later be passed down through centuries, though often misunderstood. Reality arranges itself around your dominant emotional tone. Not your strongest, not your loudest, not your most passionate, your dominant one, the vibration you return to most often, the emotional hum in the background of your days. Just as the lake reflected the sky before any pebble was thrown, your life reflects your internal landscape before any intention is stated. The traveler asked Soren how one could shift their emotional frequency if life circumstances constantly pulled them into the lower states of fear, worry, or lack. Soren smiled gently. "You do not wait for the lake to calm before creating beautiful ripples," he said. "You calm yourself first, and the lake responds." This was the secret hidden in plain sight. Life does not improve so you may feel better. You feel better so life may improve, and not by avoidance, not by forced positivity, but by tuning your emotional field like a musician tuning their beloved instrument, carefully, consistently, lovingly. Ancient practice, the ripple ritual. Sit quietly for a moment each morning. Place one hand on your chest and the other on your abdomen. Inhale slowly and whisper, "What ripple am I sending today?" Do not distort the answer, do not judge the answer, simply witness it. Once you understand the ripple you are creating, you hold the power to change it. And when you change your ripple, your reality has no choice but to rearrange around it, just as the lake reorganizes itself around every pebble cast into its depths. For nothing you think is small, nothing you feel is inconsequential. Every emotion is an instruction, every thought is a wave, and the universe is listening with infinite precision. Chapter 3. The Echo Within the Void. In the heart of a barren desert, where the wind carved stories into the sand and the nights stretched like endless tapestries of stars, there once lived a hermit named Leor. His dwelling was a small stone hut pressed against the side of a forgotten cliff, a place where silence itself seemed to have taken refuge. Unlike most who sought solitude to escape the world, Leor sought the silence to listen more deeply to it. For legend whispered that in the void, the untouched space between sound and form, there existed a hidden echo, a primordial resonance that shaped everything that could ever be. Leor had spent 40 years searching for this echo. He believed that if he could hear it, he would unlock the secret language the universe used to move mountains, stir winds, and guide destinies. Yet the more he strained to listen, the more the world seemed to grow quieter, as though his desperate seeking smothered the very answer he hoped to find. One night, under a moon so thin it could have been a blade drawn across the darkness, Leor reached a breaking point. Sitting before a dying fire, he whispered into the silence, "Speak to me. If the universe truly has a voice, let it be heard." His words were carried away like dust on the breeze. Not even an echo returned. In that hollow moment, Leor felt something collapse inside him, the weight of decades of striving, the belief that enlightenment could be forced open like a sealed chest. Exhausted, he lay back on the cool stone floor and allowed the desert night to swallow him whole. Then, something extraordinary happened. In the deepest stillness, in the space where even his thoughts lost their grip, he heard it. A resonance so subtle it felt more like a memory than a sound. It rose not from the desert around him, but from within him. A single tone, soft yet infinite, like a whisper spoken before the birth of creation. The echo, it vibrated through his bones, his breath, his heartbeat, and in its quiet power, Leor understood what the mystics before him had always known. The universe does not respond to noise, it responds to resonance. The echo within the void was not something external to hear. It was the reflection of one's own inner alignment with the fabric of existence. When the mind is cluttered with demands and the heart tangled with expectations, the echo hides. But when a person becomes still enough to release their striving, the echo emerges naturally, because it has been there all along. Leor realized that his years of effort had been unnecessary. His seeking had created noise. His desire to hear had become an obstacle to listening. Only when he surrendered completely did the echo reveal itself. He rose at dawn with a new clarity. As the first light painted the dunes in amber hues, he walked into the open desert and spoke a single word. He did not choose it. It rose from within him, carried by the same resonance he had heard in the void. The moment the word left his lips, the wind shifted. Sand spiraled into geometric patterns at his feet. The air thickened as if listening. The sky shimmered faintly. Reality itself acknowledged his vibration and reorganized around it. For he had spoken not from hope, fear, or effort, but from alignment with the echo that underlies all creation. From that day forward, Leor's life changed. When he needed water, clouds gathered. When he sought direction, the wind formed pathways in the sand. When he desired understanding, knowledge rose unbidden within him like a tide returning to its shore. He understood then that the universe is not moved by instruction. It is moved by reflection. It mirrors the internal tone you emit, not the words you speak. And when your inner tone harmonizes with the echo in the void, creation unfolds effortlessly, responding with exquisite precision. This is the forgotten truth. Manifestation is not the act of commanding reality. It is the art of resonating with it. The echo is the bridge between consciousness and form, between your internal world and the external one. Every desire becomes effortless when carried by this resonance, for the universe cannot resist what matches its own primordial vibration. Leor spent the rest of his days teaching those who sought him, not through words, but through presence. Students would sit in silence with him, expecting grand revelations. Instead, they would begin to feel something shift inside them, an internal tuning, a soft hum realigning their being. Without instruction, their lives outside the desert transformed, not because Leor gave them knowledge, but because he helped them remember the echo. Ancient practice, the echo meditation. Sit in a place of quiet. Do not force your breath or your thoughts. Instead, think of silence not as the absence of sound, but as a living field. Imagine a subtle hum weaving through your entire body. This hum is not created, it is revealed. Whisper softly, "Let me hear the truth beneath my thoughts." Do not listen with your ears, listen with your being. The echo will rise, and when it does, your reality will begin rearranging itself to match the resonance you have finally remembered. Chapter 4. When the universe starts listening. In a towering city of glass and steel, where ambitions flickered like neon lights and the pace of life pulsed with ceaseless urgency, lived a young woman named Mireia. Though surrounded by millions, she felt unseen, as if her presence barely made a ripple in the vast ocean of humanity. Each morning she repeated affirmations she found in books, whispered intentions she hoped the universe might somehow hear. Yet nothing changed. Her dreams remained stubbornly out of reach. Her efforts scattered like seeds tossed into a storm. She often wondered, why does nothing respond? Why does the universe feel deaf to my voice? One evening, drained from another unrewarding day, Mireia wandered into the city's oldest district, a place where time moved differently. Lantern-lit streets wound through quiet alleyways, and ancient stone walls held secrets older than any skyscraper. There she found a small tea house hidden behind a curtain of ivy. Its door opened before she touched it, as if welcoming her with deliberate intention. Inside sat an elderly man stirring a cup of jasmine tea. Without looking up, he said, "You have been speaking but not transmitting." Mireia froze. "What do you mean?" The man gestured for her to sit. "Most people broadcast their wishes from a place the universe cannot hear." She frowned. "But I say my affirmations. I visualize. I write down what I want." The man smiled gently. "And yet your energy whispers a different message." He reached beneath the table and placed 2 tuning forks before her. He struck the first, producing a pure, steady tone. Then he struck the second, but it emitted no sound. It vibrated faintly, but the vibration faded quickly. "Why did that one not resonate?" she asked. "Because its frequency was not aligned," he said. "Words are the strike. Emotion is the tuning." He lifted the silent fork and adjusted it slightly, then struck it again. This time, it hummed beautifully in harmony with the first. Mireia felt something shift inside her. The man continued, "You ask the universe for abundance with your voice, but you radiate fear with your heart. You hope for love, but you emit the vibration of unworthiness. You seek opportunity, but you carry the frequency of doubt." He paused, letting the truth settle. "The universe is always listening," he said, "but it listens to vibration, not vocabulary." Mireia felt her chest tighten. "So, how do I change the frequency I'm sending?" The old man reached for a candle, lighting it with a single breath. "You must first become aware of the vibration you currently hold. Most people are unaware of their dominant emotional tone because they are too busy trying to fix their lives." He handed her a small mirror. "Look," he said. She raised the mirror, expecting to see her reflection. Instead, she saw faint movements around her, a swirling field of dim, tangled colors. Her fear, exhaustion, and frustration manifested not as thoughts, but as vibration. The man explained, "This is what the universe responds to. Not the face you show the world, but the energy behind it." He waved a hand over the mirror, and the reflection vanished. "Now," he said, "feel into your desire, not from longing, not from striving, but from becoming." Mireia closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. For the first time, she didn't think of her dreams as distant or fragile. She imagined how it would feel if they were already hers, if life supported her, if she moved with serenity and confidence. The room shifted. The air thickened with warmth. The candle flame brightened. The old man nodded approvingly. "Now," he whispered, "the universe is listening." In that moment, Mireia understood what she had been missing. Manifestation was not shouting into the cosmos. It was aligning with it. It was speaking a language not of words but of resonance. The universe responded instantly, not because she asked, but because she finally vibrated in a way it could hear. Over the following weeks, Mireia's life transformed with uncanny fluidity. Opportunities that once eluded her appeared effortlessly. People arrived exactly when needed. Her daily struggles dissolved into sequences of meaningful synchronicities. She no longer had to push doors open. They swung open on their own. Not because she became louder, but because she became clearer. Not because she demanded, but because she aligned. This is the truth the Tea Master revealed. The universe rearranges itself the moment your vibration becomes undeniable. The moment you hum with the frequency of what you seek. the moment you stop trying to be heard and start resonating instead. Ancient practice, the resonant breath. Place your hand over your heart. Breathe slowly, imagining each inhale tuning you like a sacred instrument. On each exhale, whisper softly, "Let my vibrations speak what my words cannot." Do this until your body feels like it is glowing from within. When you walk into the world in this state, you become impossible for the universe to ignore. Chapter 5. The Law Beneath All Other Laws. In a hidden village built high along the ancient mountain ridges, where the clouds drifted low enough to touch the rooftops, there lived a young scholar named Amari. For years he dedicated himself to mastering every metaphysical law ever documented. His shelves overflowed with scrolls on manifestation, divine timing, frequency alignment, sacred geometry, and universal principles whispered through the ages. Yet for all his knowledge, Amari could not shape his life the way the legends promised. His manifestations sputtered like dying candles. His synchronicities arrived fragmented and incomplete, and his intentions felt heavy, stubborn, resistant. Despite having studied more than anyone he knew, his reality refused to bend. One evening, frustrated and exhausted, he approached the village elder, a woman so ancient and wise that even the winds slowed when passing by her window. She listened to his lament quietly, her eyes soft, her breath unhurried. When he finished, she smiled in a way that felt both comforting and unsettling. "You know many things," she said gently, "but you have not yet understood the one thing." Amari frowned. "The one thing?" She rose slowly, leaning on her cane, and beckoned him to follow. She led him deep into the mountain forest, where trees stood like silent monks and the air shimmered with unseen presence. After walking for hours, they reached a clearing where a single tree towered above all others. Its trunk spiraled with ancient carvings, its branches humming with an energy Amari had never felt before. "This is the first tree," the elder said. "It existed before this village, before these mountains, before even the old gods were named." Amari gazed at the carvings, recognizing symbols from dozens of teachings, sigils of attraction, runes of manifestation, glyphs of spiritual awakening. Every metaphysical concept he had studied was etched into this one colossal trunk. Confusion stirred within him. "Why are they all here?" The elder touched the bark with reverence. "Because they are all reflections," she said, "of a single truth." She took Amari's hand and placed it against the tree. In that instant, a surge of energy flowed through him, not painful but profound. It was as though the tree breathed, and for a moment, his breath aligned with it. The carvings began to glow softly beneath his fingertips. Each symbol pulsed, not separately, but like spokes revolving around an unseen center. And then he understood. All the teachings he had dedicated his life to were not distinct laws, but expressions of a deeper principle. "You see many laws," the elder said softly, "but there is only one." He felt the truth vibrate through him. Awareness creates reality. Recognition is manifestation. Belief is the architect behind all experience. Every law, attraction, assumption, vibration, alignment, was simply a doorway leading back to the same home. What you hold as true becomes true. The universe does not respond to rituals, techniques, or traditions. These are merely tools that help the mind focus. What the universe responds to is the singular force beneath all of them. Your inner recognition of reality's nature. He saw it clearly. The law of attraction works because awareness is magnetic. The law of assumption works because awareness sets the template. The law of vibration works because awareness chooses the frequency. Divine timing works because awareness aligns with the correct timeline. All roads led to the same route. The elder spoke again. Every spiritual practice is a mirror. It is not the practice that holds the power, but the recognition it awakens within you. She gestured to the tree. This is why so many seek rituals, objects, incantations, or methods. They search for power outside themselves. But power does not come from tools. Power comes from the awareness that those tools help reveal. Amari's throat tightened. "So I never needed all those laws." "You needed them," she corrected kindly, "until you didn't." She closed her eyes and placed her palms against the tree. When you know the one law, the others become unnecessary. When you recognize you are the center from which reality unfolds, everything moves without effort. Amari listened as the wind circled the clearing, carrying whispers of truths hidden for centuries. He felt a shift deep in his being, not a thought but a knowing, a remembrance, the kind that expands through the body like warmth spreading through cold hands. Awareness shapes, awareness summons, awareness commands, awareness manifests. The universe does not rearrange itself because of your actions. It rearranges itself because of your understanding. That night, as Amari walked back through the forest, he noticed the world responding differently. His steps felt guided. The air carried a lighter weight. Even the shadows seemed welcoming rather than ominous. The next morning, without forcing anything, without reciting affirmations or visualizing intensely, opportunities began to appear. Not because he tried harder, but because he no longer tried at all. He had found the root, and with it, the world shifted. Ancient practice, the root of roots. Sit quietly and breathe deeply. Whisper inwardly, there is only one power, awareness. Feel your inner world rearranging around this truth. Feel the universe adjusting to your recognition. Allow this knowing to become your foundation. For once you see the one law, all others align like stars returning to their true positions in the sky. Chapter 6. The Fracture That Reveals the Path. At the edge of a bustling port city lived a woman named Leora, renowned for her remarkable lantern making. Her lanterns glowed not with ordinary light, but with an otherworldly brilliance, as though capturing fragments of dawn itself. Travelers from distant lands sought her creations, believing they carried good fortune and clarity to those who lit them. But Leora held a secret. For months, she had been unable to create even one lantern that glowed the way her old ones did. Her hands trembled when she worked. Her vision blurred. The spark that once guided her craft had slipped through her fingers like fading embers. Days turned into weeks. Commissions piled up. People whispered that she had lost her gift. She felt broken, fractured, like a vessel with cracks too deep to mend. One stormy afternoon, overwhelmed and disheartened, Leora hurled one of her newly formed lanterns to the floor. It shattered into brilliant fragments, glass scattering in every direction. She collapsed to her knees, her tears mingling with the shards. It was then that something unexpected caught her eye. The broken pieces glowed, not with the weak flicker her recent lanterns produced, but with the same unmistakable radiance her early masterpieces had held. The glow pulsed softly, gently illuminating the darkened workshop. Leora stared in awe. The lantern had not failed. The lantern had simply revealed its truth through its fracture. Her breath caught. In that moment, a revelation dawned. Sometimes life does not break you. Sometimes it breaks what blocks your light. She touched one glowing shard carefully. It vibrated with a warmth that traveled through her fingers and into her chest. A reminder, a whisper, a forgotten knowing. The fracture had revealed the path. Leora realized that in her relentless effort to recreate what she believed she had lost, she had been working from fear, not inspiration, from lack, not alignment, from memory, not presence. Her inner world had been fractured long before her lantern shattered. The breaking had only exposed what was already true. As she examined the glowing shards, she saw something else. The shapes and patterns in the cracks formed constellations, symbols she recognized from ancient teachings, signs of transformation, renewal, rebirth. The universe had been trying to speak to her through subtle whispers, but it had spoken louder through the break. This is the way of alignment. When the old path becomes too small for your becoming, it fractures, not as punishment, but as invitation. The universe sometimes rearranges your world, not through gentle nudges, but through decisive breaks that force you into clarity. Leora gathered the glowing fragments and arranged them on her workbench. They formed a pattern she had never intentionally created, yet it felt undeniably right. She began crafting a new lantern around these broken pieces, using the fractures as guiding lines. Hour after hour, she worked in a state of flow she had not felt in years. She did not force. She did not struggle. She allowed. She listened. She followed the path that the brokenness revealed. By dawn, the lantern was complete. When she lit it, the entire workshop erupted in a radiant brilliance, more beautiful than anything she had ever created. The light danced through the cracks, casting patterns that filled the room with shimmering constellations. She wept, not from despair, but from recognition. Her brokenness had not ended her gift. It had restored it, refined it, elevated it. In the following days, travelers arrived seeking her lanterns as before, but this time they whispered of visions, insights, and awakenings experienced when her lanterns were lit. Her art had not been diminished. It had evolved. Leora finally understood. The universe uses fractures to reveal your hidden alignment. What breaks shows you where light is waiting to enter, and where light enters, the path becomes clear. Ancient practice, the shattered light ritual. Take an object, stone, leaf, crystal, or paper, and gently break or tear it. Study the fracture lines. Ask inwardly, what truth is being revealed through my breaking? Let the cracks become maps. Let them guide you. Let them show you the path you could not see before. For sometimes the universe speaks loudest through the places where your life shatters, and the light that emerges is the beginning of everything you were meant to become. Chapter 7. The Magnetic Heart. In a tranquil valley carved by rivers older than memory, there lived a healer named Selene. Her presence alone was enough to calm storms within troubled souls. People traveled across deserts, forests, and oceans to seek her counsel, not because she promised miracles, but because miracles happened around her as naturally as flowers blooming in spring. Plants flourished at her touch. Animals approached her without fear. Lost children found their way home when she whispered their names. People said she possessed magic, but Selene always shook her head gently and replied, "I simply remember what others have forgotten." What she remembered was the secret of the magnetic heart. One evening, a young man named Nico arrived at her cottage with exhaustion etched into his face. His life had been plagued with misfortune, failed attempts, broken relationships, missed opportunities. He tried affirmations, meditations, visualizations, prayers, and rituals, but nothing had ever shifted. His heart felt like a weight he could no longer carry. "I don't know what I'm doing wrong," he admitted. "I say all the right words. I think all the right thoughts, but nothing changes." Selene poured him tea made from moonlit blossoms and invited him to sit by the hearth. "You live from your mind," she said, "but reality listens to your heart." Nico frowned. "Isn't the mind the source of creation?" She shook her head slowly. "The mind shapes thoughts. The heart shapes frequency, and frequency shapes worlds." She took a glass jar filled with iron filings and placed a small magnet beneath it. Instantly, the filings reorganized themselves, drawn into perfect alignment. "This," she said, "is how the universe responds to your emotional field." She lifted the magnet, and the filings scattered into disorder. "This," she continued, "is what happens when the heart is out of alignment. The universe becomes disorganized around you." Nico leaned closer, captivated. Selene explained that every desire has a corresponding vibration. Abundance vibrates differently than scarcity. Love vibrates differently than fear. Peace vibrates differently than chaos. When the heart aligns with the vibration of what is desired, reality rushes toward it with unfailing accuracy, much like the filings leaping toward the magnet. "Your life follows your heart," she said, "not your words." She handed Nico a small stone, asking him to hold it while thinking of something he desperately wanted. As he did, the stone remained cold and inert. "Now," she whispered softly, "stop thinking. Feel what it would be like if you already had it." At first, Nico struggled. His chest felt tight, his breath shallow, but slowly, tentatively, he allowed himself to imagine the emotion, not the image. Not the thing desired, but the feeling fulfilled. Something shifted. The stone grew warm in his palm. Selene nodded. "There, the heart has begun to open." She continued, "Your mind is a lamp. It illuminates possibilities, but the heart is the electricity that gives the lamp life. Without the heart, the lamp remains dark, no matter how beautifully crafted. She then told him a story of an ancient king who desired rain during a long drought. He ordered rituals, sacrifices, and elaborate ceremonies, but the skies remained barren. Finally, a humble farmer approached the king and said, "I will ask the rain to return." The farmer went to a quiet hilltop and sat in silence. He did not pray, he did not chant. He simply felt gratitude for rain as though it were already falling. Within hours, thunder echoed across the horizon. Rain poured for 3 days. The king asked how the farmer had achieved what thousands could not. The farmer replied, "The sky mirrors the heart that calls to it." Selene looked at Nico with profound tenderness. "It is not your desires that fail," she said. "It is the emotional frequency behind them." She explained that people often ask for abundance while vibrating the fear of not having it. They ask for love while vibrating loneliness. They ask for success while vibrating self-doubt. Words become hollow when the heart beats to a different rhythm. "The universe responds to coherence," she said, "not contradiction." To teach him the power of coherence, Selene instructed Nico in the practice of heart attunement. Each morning, before he spoke or thought of anything he wished to manifest, he was to sit quietly with one hand over his heart. He would breathe slowly, imagining a warm light expanding from within his chest. Once he felt the warmth, he would gently summon the feeling of his desire fulfilled, not the image, not the scenario, but the emotional essence. Joy, relief, certainty, belonging, and abundance, love. "That feeling," she told him, "is your magnet. Hold it gently, not tightly. Let it hum, let it radiate." Within days, subtle shifts began to unfold in his life. Strangers smiled at him warmly. Unexpected invitations arrived. Obstacles dissolved. Opportunities emerged with uncanny timing. People he thought had forgotten him reached out with sincerity. He felt lighter, clearer, more aligned. The world seemed to bend in his favor, not abruptly, but like a river naturally finding its way home. Eventually, Nico returned to Selene. "What changed?" he asked. She smiled knowingly. "You did," she said. "Your heart began to speak the universe's language." And now a truth settled into his bones. The heart does not follow reality. Reality follows the heart. Ancient practice. The heart resonance ritual. Place your hand over your chest. Breathe deeply until the breath softens. Imagine a warm, golden pulse expanding with each inhale. When the warmth becomes steady, summon the feeling of your desire fulfilled. Hold it lightly. Let it hum through your ribs like sacred electricity. Your heart is the magnet. Your life is the filings. Chapter 8. The Softening that Opens the Door. Far beyond the borders of the known kingdoms, where the world broke into wild forests and untamed mountains, there lived a warrior named Kale. His reputation stretched across the land, fearless in battle, relentless in pursuit, unyielding in every endeavor. People said he could cut through stone with his determination alone. And yet for all his strength, one thing consistently eluded him: peace. No matter how many victories he won, he felt a tension within him he could not shake, a constant tightening, a battle that never ended. He believed he could force destiny the way he forced enemies to kneel. He believed everything could be conquered with effort, but effort had become his prison. One night, after years of restless searching, Kale heard rumors of an old sage who lived in a mountain hut carved from white stone. The sage was said to possess the wisdom of ages, capable of bending reality without lifting a finger. Intrigued, Kale sought him out. The journey was treacherous. Snowstorms, cliffs, and frigid winds tested Kale's endurance. By the time he reached the sage's hut, he was exhausted, breathless, and furious at the world for resisting him. He burst through the door shouting, "Teach me how to master my fate!" The sage looked up slowly from stirring a bowl of soup, unimpressed. "You wish to master fate," he said calmly, "yet you have not learned how to stop fighting what is." Kale bristled. "I became the greatest warrior by pushing through every obstacle. Why should the universe be any different?" The sage smiled faintly. "If you push against the universe," he said, The universe will push back. He handed Kale a cup of warm tea. Drink. Kale drank and immediately spat it out. It's bitter. The sage raised an eyebrow. And yet you drank it with aggression. Even tea senses your tension. He placed a feather in Kale's hand. Try bending it. Kale scoffed and bent the feather easily. Now, the sage said, placing a stone in his palm. Bend this. Kale strained. His muscles bulged. His face reddened. But the stone remained unchanged. I thought so, the sage said quietly. Your strength bends what is already soft and fails against what is rigid. But try something else. The sage took the stone and placed it in a bowl of warm water. Watch. Slowly, the stone began to crack along faint lines Kale hadn't noticed. The sage tapped the stone gently with a wooden spoon, and it split open effortlessly, revealing a shimmering crystal inside. Kale stared in disbelief. How did you do that? I didn't, the sage answered. I softened what needed softening. Then everything opened on its own. Kale felt something shift within him. A realization, a truth he had never been taught. Life opens not through force, but through softening. The sage gestured to the mountains outside. You battle reality like a warrior charging at stone, but reality yields only to those who understand its nature. He continued. Every door you tried to break down could have been opened with ease if you had softened first. Kale's chest tightened. Memories rushed through him, years of struggle, fights, failed attempts, resistance, frustration. He had believed that pushing harder made him strong, but now he realized that his greatest wounds came from tightening against life rather than flowing with it. The sage invited him outside to witness something in the snow. A tiny sprout pushed through the frost, impossibly delicate, yet unmistakably alive. This, the sage said, is strength. Kale scoffed. That would die in a single storm. The sage shook his head gently. It survives storms not through resistance, but through flexibility. The rigid tree breaks in the wind. The soft reed bends and rises again. He placed a hand over Kale's heart. You have lived like the tree. It is time to become the reed. Kale lowered his sword for the first time in decades. He exhaled deeply, a breath that felt like releasing a lifetime of tension. The sage nodded. When you soften your inner world, the outer world rearranges. The barriers you fight against dissolve. The paths you seek appear. The universe responds instantly to softness. Kale stayed with the sage for many weeks. He learned to breathe again, to listen, to release, to allow. He discovered that the greatest battles were not won with force, but with surrender to alignment. And when he returned to the world beyond the mountains, he found that life itself seemed to move aside for him. Opportunities flowed, conflicts resolved without effort. Fortune arrived unannounced. Kale learned what the greatest warriors and mystics always knew. Softness is not the opposite of strength. It is its source. Ancient practice, the softening breath. Sit with your spine straight. Place one hand on your abdomen. Inhale slowly through your nose. Exhale with a soft sigh. With each breath, whisper inwardly, I release my grip. Feel the tension melt. Feel the inner doors open. Feel reality respond. For the universe rearranges itself not for the rigid, but for the soft, the open, the willing. Chapter 9. The Unseen Hands Rearranging Everything. High atop the cliffs overlooking the ocean lived a woman named Marin, known throughout the coastal villages as the one who always arrived at the right place, at the right moment, with uncanny precision. Some said she had visions. Others claimed she understood omens. But the truth was far stranger and far simpler. Marin had learned how to feel the movement of the unseen hands, not hands of flesh and bone, but subtle forces, currents of intelligence that guided the unfolding of events long before they became visible to the eye. Most people mistook these quiet interventions as coincidences, strokes of luck, or random chance. But Marin knew better. She sensed the threads beneath the tapestry. One morning, a fisherman named Aldrich came to her in desperation. For months his nets had come up empty, his boat plagued by misfortune. Storms seemed to follow him. Opportunities slipped through his fingers like water through cupped palms. "I work harder than anyone," he lamented, "but it is as though the world has turned against me." Maren listened with her usual soft patience, her gaze drifting toward the horizon where sunlight danced upon the waves. "You are watching the surface," she said, "but the surface never reveals the truth." Aldrich frowned. "What truth?" "That the universe is always rearranging itself in response to your inner world," she said. "But when you resist, you disrupt its work." He shook his head. What does that even mean? Maren guided him to a cliffside alcove carved by centuries of wind. Inside stood an ancient wind chime made not of metal or wood, but of delicate shells threaded with silver string. She gave the strings a gentle touch. The shells stirred, releasing a haunting melody that echoed across the cliffside. "Do you hear this?" she asked. Aldrich nodded. "The wind moves the shells, but you cannot see the wind. You cannot guide it, you cannot control it. Yet it shapes the music." She lifted her finger, letting a breeze slip through her hand. "The unseen always moves first." Aldrich remained silent, but his brow furrowed in thought. Maren continued. "Your outer circumstances are only the last link in a long chain of events. Energy shifts, feelings shift, thoughts shift, emotions shift, and then, only then, does the physical world respond." She placed a smooth stone in his palm. "Hold this." He did. "Now release your frustration." Aldrich sighed deeply, letting his shoulders drop. The stone grew slightly warmer. Maren smiled faintly. "There," she said. "The unseen hands have begun to move again." Aldrich looked down in confusion. "How does releasing frustration change anything outside of me?" "Because what moves within you rearranges what moves around you." She gestured toward the ocean. "The currents do not fight the waves dance upon them." She explained that the universe operates through invisible orchestration. Every desire, every emotion, every thought sends signals into the unseen field. But frustration and fear create static, blocking the natural pathways through which solutions travel. "Your nets are not empty because life is cruel," she said gently. "Your nets are empty because you have tangled them with resistance." Aldrich bowed his head. Maren placed her hand on his shoulder. "When you trust, the unseen hands rearrange everything you need. You will find yourself in the right conversations, the right opportunities, the right moments without force or planning. You will witness people appearing exactly when you need them. You will see obstacles dissolve without effort." She paused. "But when you try to control every detail, you interfere with the very forces designed to help you." To help him understand, she told him a story. Years ago, she herself had been lost at sea when a storm shattered her boat. She clung to a piece of driftwood, terrified and alone. She had no control, no plan, no solution. "In my desperation," she said, "I kept trying to paddle toward the shore, but the more I forced the direction, the farther the currents carried me into danger." Finally, exhausted, she surrendered, truly surrendered, letting the sea carry her where it wished. Within hours, she drifted to a hidden cove she never knew existed. Fishermen later told her that the only reason she survived was because the currents had guided her to one of the few places where the storm could not reach. "If I had continued fighting," she said, "I would not be here today." Aldrich felt a shiver crawl down his spine. "The unseen hands know what you do not," she whispered. "Trust them." She instructed him to do one simple thing. Each morning, before stepping onto his boat, he was to close his eyes and whisper inwardly, "Show me the easiest way, not the most heroic way, not the most effortful way, not the most logical way. The easiest way." That single phrase, she explained, opens the field. It signals willingness. It allows the unseen intelligence to guide the unfolding of events without resistance. For the universe rearranges itself the moment you stop insisting on your own path and allow the greater path to reveal itself. In the weeks that followed, Aldrich noticed shifts so profound they could not be explained by chance. His nets filled effortlessly. Storms bypassed him. Strangers offered guidance at perfect moments. New opportunities emerged out of nowhere. He returned to Marin with tears in his eyes. "What changed?" he asked. Marin smiled. "You finally allowed the unseen hands to help you." Ancient practice, the whisper of surrender. Each morning, place your hand over your chest. Close your eyes. Whisper inwardly, "Show me the easiest way." Let the universe unfold around your softness. Let the unseen hands work in your favor. For when you stop resisting the unseen begins rearranging everything in your life with astonishing precision. Chapter 10. The Path That Forms Beneath Your Feet. In the Eastern Kingdom, nestled between emerald forests and ancient stone ruins, lived a young traveler named Ilara. From childhood she carried a dream in her heart. A dream to find the legendary Temple of the First Dawn, a place said to hold the wisdom of the universe itself. Many had attempted the journey but turned back, claiming the paths shifted, vanished, or led them in circles. But Ilara believed that the temple existed not just in maps, but in the soul. And so, she set out with nothing but a satchel of food, a worn journal, and an unwavering desire to reach the sacred place. For weeks she traversed forests, rivers, fog-covered valleys, and steep cliffs. But the path was never clear. Trails would appear for a moment, then dissolve into undergrowth. Landmarks shifted, directions contradicted each other. She grew weary, her spirit heavy with frustration. One evening, after losing the trail for the third time that day, she collapsed beneath a dying tree. Tears blurred her vision. "I do everything I can," she whispered, "but I never move closer." Her words vanished into the twilight, swallowed by the forest. Then, unexpectedly, an elderly monk emerged from between the trees, walking with the ease of someone guided by invisible currents. "You seek the temple," he said, as if reading her thoughts. Ilara nodded, startled. "Do you know where it is?" He smiled. "Yes, I arrived there many years ago." Her heart raced. "Then show me the path." The monk shook his head gently. "The path cannot be shown," he said. "It appears only when you stop searching for it." Ilara frowned in confusion. "How can I walk a path that isn't there?" The monk sat beside her and drew a circle in the dirt. "Look at this circle. It is a boundary you imagine exists between where you are and where you long to be. You believe you must bridge the two. But the truth is far simpler." He scattered the circle with his hand. "There is no separation between you and your destination. The path forms beneath your feet when you walk in alignment." Ilara felt her breath still. "What does alignment mean?" "It means you stop walking from fear, from desperation, from urgency," he said. "Walk from presence, walk from trust, walk from knowing." He handed her a small wooden bead carved with a symbol resembling intertwining rivers. "This," he said, "is the sigil of unfolding. It reminds you that life reveals its next step only when you stop forcing it." Before she could ask more, the monk rose and disappeared into the forest without sound, as though swallowed by the very air. That night, Ilara reflected deeply. She realized that her journey had been driven by longing, frustration, and fear of failure. Every step had been an attempt to reach a destination that always felt just out of reach. So the next morning, she made a decision. She would no longer chase the temple. She would walk as though the temple walked with her. She slowed her pace. She breathed more deeply. She noticed the world around her, the rustling leaves, the shifting sunlight, the whisper of the wind. And something extraordinary happened. A faint path began to appear under her feet, not all at once, not clearly. But as she walked with presence, not yearning, not striving, the earth beneath her responded. Grass bent, stones shifted, the forest parted gently. The path appeared only one step at a time, always disappearing behind her and unfolding ahead. She felt a steady peace growing in her chest. Days became weeks, and the more she trusted the unfolding, the clearer the path became. She encountered people who offered guidance without her asking. Storms shifted around her. Animals led her away from danger. In moments of doubt, the wooden bead warmed in her palm, reminding her of the monk's words. She realized, "You do not find the path. You become the path." When she finally reached the Temple of the First Dawn, it was not through maps or effort or determination. It was through alignment, through walking with the knowing that her destination was within her the entire time. At the temple gates stood the monk, waiting. "You arrived," he said softly. Ilara smiled through tears. "I followed the path." "No," he corrected. "You followed yourself." She understood. This is the law of unfolding. Your next step appears only when you stop trying to see the entire road. You walk into your destiny not by force but by resonance. Ancient practice, the step of unfolding. Stand barefoot if possible. Close your eyes. Place your attention on the soles of your feet. Whisper inwardly, "Let the path appear beneath me." Take one slow step. Feel the ground rise to meet you. Take another. Feel the universe arranging itself to support your movement. When you walk with this presence, the path forms at the exact moment you need it, and not a moment before. Chapter 11. The Silent Architect. In the heart of an ancient monastery built into the cliffs of a forgotten land lived a master named Arian, an elder so inwardly radiant that even the shadows around him seemed soft. Travelers came from distant kingdoms not for teachings or rituals, but simply to sit in his presence. For Arian possessed a rare quality, the stillness of one who no longer wrestled with life. But the greatest mystery surrounding him was this: events around Arian unfolded with uncanny perfection. Rain fell when his crops needed water. Strangers arrived with messages he hadn't yet spoken aloud. Needs were met before they became spoken desires. Some said he was blessed by the gods. Others believed he commanded nature. Yet Arian always smiled and said only, "Life flows easily when the architect is silent." No one understood what he meant. One day, a young man named Callan climbed the steep path to the monastery. He had spent his life striving, fighting for opportunities, forcing results, pushing himself until even joy felt like labor. He had heard rumors that Arian held the key to effortless living, and he desperately sought the secret. When he arrived, breathless and weary, he bowed deeply before the master. "Teach me how you create such harmony in your life," Callan pleaded. "Teach me how to shape my reality with ease, the way you do." Arian poured him a cup of warm herbal tea, gesturing for him to sit. "You believe I shape reality," Arian said gently. "But the truth is far simpler. I do not shape it at all." Callan blinked in confusion. Arian continued, "You have spent your life trying to be the architect, drawing plans, forcing materials, controlling every detail, and yet you are exhausted because you have mistaken your role." He leaned forward, voice soft as falling snow. "There is a silent architect within you, one who builds universes while you sleep." Callan swallowed hard. "What is this architect?" "Your deeper consciousness," Arian replied. "The part of you that existed before your name, before your fears, before your ambitions. The one who moves with the universe, not against it." Arian guided Callan outside to a plateau overlooking the valley. Below them, the wind streamed like a river across the land, shaping patterns in the tall grass. "See that?" Arian asked. "The grass bends without effort. It does not ask the wind where to blow. It trusts the current." He placed his hand on Callan's chest. "You are the grass, but you try to be the wind." Callan froze. Arian continued, "Your conscious mind is loud. It wants, demands, fears, and plans. But manifestation does not come from noise. It comes from the silent architect who works beneath the noise." He explained that while the mind complains and grasps, the deeper consciousness quietly rearranges everything: people, timing, opportunities, pathways. But when the mind interferes, the architecture becomes tangled and distorted. "Your job is not to build," Arian said. "Your job is to keep the mind quiet enough for the real builder to work." Callan stared at the shifting patterns in the valley. "How do I let this architect take over?" Arian smiled. Through surrender, trust, and inner quiet, you step back and you let the deeper intelligence step forward. Then Arian told him a story. Years ago, before Arian became a master, he wanted to build a sanctuary for travelers. He designed blueprints, calculated routes, and pushed workers to meet deadlines. But everything went wrong. Storms washed away foundations, tools broke, and workers quit. The more he tried to force progress, the worse things became. Finally, in defeat, he sat in the ruins and wept. In that moment of collapse, a deep calm washed over him, an inner knowing that whispered, "Stop, let it come to you." He abandoned the project entirely. Days later, a merchant arrived offering materials he had no use for. A group of travelers volunteered to help build shelter in exchange for food. A local architect wandered into the valley seeking solitude and offered guidance. The sanctuary arose effortlessly, more beautiful than Arian had ever planned. "It was then," Arian said, "that I realized nothing I had designed could compare to what the silent architect created when I released control." Callan listened in awe. "Your desires," Arian said, "do not need more effort. They need more space, more silence, more trust." He guided Callan into a meditation chamber lit by a single candle. The air was warm with incense, the room quiet as moonlight. "Sit," Arian instructed. "Breathe deeply and say inwardly, 'I do not need to make this happen. I need only to allow it.'" Callan followed the instructions. At first, his thoughts wrestled and resisted, but slowly, something shifted. His chest softened, his breath deepened. A warmth spread through him. In the silence, he felt it, a presence moving through him, a deeper intelligence arranging things he could not see. A silent architect gliding into place. Tears filled his eyes. Arian placed a hand on his shoulder. "There. That is the one who builds your reality." Callan stayed at the monastery for several weeks, learning to quiet the mind and listen to the silence beneath thought. When he finally returned to the world, he found that life unfolded around him with effortless synchronicity. He stopped forcing outcomes, he stopped chasing opportunities, he stopped wrestling with destiny, and yet everything he once struggled for came to him naturally. Relationships, success, healing, purpose, all orchestrated by the silent architect moving behind the scenes. He realized, when you stop trying to be the builder, the universe begins building for you. Ancient practice, the quiet hour. Sit in stillness for a few minutes each day. Place a hand on your chest and whisper inwardly, "I step back. Let the architect build." Feel the mind soften. Feel the deeper intelligence rise. For the universe speaks in silence, and only the silent architects of their lives ever learn to hear it. Chapter 12. The frequency that reality obeys. In the bustling heart of a desert city, woven with vibrant markets, ancient temples, and winding alleyways, lived a musician named Saphira. Her voice was said to charm storms into passing and coax flowers into blooming out of season. Yet despite her gift, her life remained a series of misaligned events, missed opportunities, broken promises, and doors that closed before she reached them. One day, during a festival honoring the desert winds, she performed a song of deep longing, her voice trembling with the ache of desires unfulfilled. When she finished, an old sage approached her, carrying a lute carved from desert oak. "You have a powerful voice," the sage said, "but you do not yet understand its true purpose." Saphira bowed respectfully. "Teach me, then." He nodded and led her through the winding alleys to a hidden courtyard where fountains whispered and lanterns glowed with soft amber light. "Play a single note," he instructed, handing her his lute. Saphira strummed a gentle tone. It vibrated beautifully. The sage nodded. "Now," he said, "match the note to the emotion of desire." She hesitated, then tried again. This time the tone wavered, rich but unstable, beauty wrapped in uncertainty. "Now," he said, "match the note to the emotion of fear." The note cracked sharply. "And now," he whispered, "match the note to the emotion of fulfillment." Saphira closed her eyes. She inhaled slowly. She imagined her desires already complete, felt the joy, the certainty, the quiet expansion. When she plucked the string this time, the note vibrated with such warmth and clarity that even the lantern flames flickered in response. The sage smiled. "There," he said. "That is the frequency reality obeys." Sapphira lowered the lute in confusion. "I don't understand." The sage sat beside the fountain and dipped his fingers into the water, causing ripples to spread outward. "Reality responds to your emotional frequency," he explained. "Not your words, not your thoughts, not your hopes. Your vibration is the command." He gestured to the ripples. "You can shout your desires into the world 1,000 times, but if your vibration contradicts them, the universe responds to the vibration, not the voice." Sapphira's breath caught. "You have been singing from longing," he continued. "But longing is the vibration of absence. You must sing from the feeling of already having." To demonstrate, he handed her 2 crystal tuning forks. "Strike the first," he said. She struck it. A clear tone rang out. "Now strike the second fork," he said softly, "but feel fear as you do." She struck it. The tone was dull, lifeless. "Now strike it again," the sage said, "but feel gratitude." She breathed deeply and allowed warmth to rise in her chest. The tone bloomed with brilliance. "Do you see?" he asked. "The fork is the same. The vibration you bring to it changes everything." Sapphira realized that she had been trying to shape her life with desire alone. But desire, without the matching emotional state, emits a frequency of lack. She had been singing her dreams into the world while vibrating the fear that they would not come. "You are like a musician tuning your voice to the wrong key," the sage said. "You cannot call in abundance with the vibration of scarcity." He guided her through a powerful exercise. "Place a hand over your heart," he instructed. She did. "Now, speak the name of something you desire." Her voice shook. "Love." "Good," he said. "Now release the thought of love and feel its presence instead." She closed her eyes. Slowly, tears rolled down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from a warmth that filled her chest, an opening, a remembering. The sage nodded. "Now the frequency matches the desire." The courtyard suddenly felt different, as though the very air shifted to accommodate the vibration she was emitting. "Reality obeys this frequency," he said. "It cannot resist it." He explained that every emotion is a tuning fork. Joy calls in joy, fear calls in fear, certainty calls in manifestation. Gratitude opens pathways, fulfillment attracts fulfillment. "Your life is not responding to your intentions," he said. "It is responding to your dominant emotional note." Sapphira spent the next weeks practicing emotional resonance. Each morning she sat in the courtyard with the sage, tuning her inner frequency not by thought, but by feeling. She would whisper, "How would this feel if it were already mine? What is the emotional signature of my desire fulfilled?" As she practiced, her entire life changed. People began offering her opportunities without her asking. Her music reached the ears of influential travelers. She was invited to perform at temples previously closed to her. Love appeared in her life with quiet inevitability. She did not force any of it. She did not chase any of it. She simply tuned her vibration, and reality obeyed. One evening, as the desert sun dipped into gold, she looked at the sage. "You were right," she whispered. "The universe listens not to what I sing, but to how I vibrate." He smiled. "You have remembered the ancient truth. Creation is frequency before form. Ancient practice, the frequency tuning. Place a hand on your heart. Summon a desire inwardly. Ask yourself, what is the emotional tone of this fulfilled? Feel it. Let the emotion spread through your ribs. Let it saturate your breath. Let it hum through your being like a sacred vibration. For when your inner note matches your desire, reality has no choice but to harmonize with you." Chapter 13. Choosing your timeline without words. In a forgotten province bordered by shifting sands and shimmering mirages, there lived a mapmaker named Rune. He was revered across kingdoms for his uncanny accuracy. His maps always led travelers to destinations others insisted could not be charted. When people asked how he achieved such precision, Rune simply smiled and said, "I do not map the land, I map the invisible currents beneath it." But there was one secret Rune never revealed. The maps he drew did not show one version of the world. They showed many. For he could perceive timelines, parallel realities running alongside the one people walked through blindly. Each fork in the road, each choice, each emotion, each belief opened a new stream of possibility. Rune understood what the sages whispered. Reality is not singular. It is a spectrum, and one's alignment determines which strand of reality becomes lived experience. One day, a traveler named Aveline arrived at Rune's workshop. Her eyes carried the weight of someone who had been walking in circles, not just in the world, but in her life. She bowed respectfully. "I've heard you can help people find their path," she said. "But I don't want a map of the land. I want a map of my destiny." Rune studied her quietly. "Your destiny isn't a location," he said. "It is a timeline, and a timeline is chosen, not found." Aveline frowned. "But how does one choose a timeline?" Rune led her into a large chamber filled with hundreds of maps. Some were painted on silk, others etched into stone or carved into wood. He lifted a thin parchment with delicate lines branching like river deltas. "This," he said, "is your life." Aveline gasped. Dozens, no, hundreds of paths veered outward from a single point, some bright, some shadowed, some twisting into spirals, others flowing straight and clear. "Which one is my future?" she asked. Rune shook his head. "All of them, and none of them. A timeline is not chosen with decisions, it is chosen with vibration." He pointed to a glowing thread of gold weaving through the possibilities. "This path," he said, "is filled with abundance, love, and synchronicity." Aveline reached for it, but he gently pulled the map back. "You cannot touch a timeline physically. You must enter it vibrationally." He handed her a crystal bowl of water and instructed her to speak her desires into it. She whispered her wishes: love, purpose, clarity. The water rippled, but only faintly. Rune asked her to try again, but this time to feel, not with thought but with emotion, the reality where her desires were already true. Aveline closed her eyes. At first, nothing happened. But then something softened. She felt warmth bloom in her chest, like the quiet joy of remembering something precious. The water began to glow, swirling with golden threads that mirrored the golden lines on the map. Rune nodded. "There. The vibration has changed. You have stepped into the timeline without moving your feet." He explained that every timeline exists concurrently, like layers of transparent fabric stacked atop one another. But a person only experiences the layer their vibration matches. Most people try to leap timelines with effort, strategy, and force. But timelines do not shift through action. They shift through resonance. Reality obeys frequency. "You have lived," Rune said, "on a timeline shaped by fear, doubt, and scarcity, not because you wanted to, but because your energy matched it. Now, when you match the frequency of a higher timeline, life moves you toward it without effort." He handed her a second bowl of water and told her to speak her fears into it. The water turned dark, rippling violently. "Your fears," Rune said, "align you with timelines full of obstacles, delays, and disappointments. Not as punishment, but because fear is the signature of those realities." He placed both bowls side by side. "This is your choice," he said, "not through willpower, but through vibration. You choose your timeline every moment of your life." Aveline felt tears rise. "So if I change my vibration, my entire reality changes?" Rune nodded, instantly in the unseen, gradually in the physical, but inevitably. He told her a story of a young boy who wanted to cross a river. He spent years building rafts, bridges, and elaborate tools, yet each attempt failed. One day, a wise woman told the boy, "The river you are trying to cross is not the same river you must cross. Change the river by changing your vibration." The boy stopped forcing. He stopped struggling. Instead, he focused on the feeling of already being across. When he opened his eyes, he found himself standing on the opposite shore, not because he walked, but because he shifted timelines. Rune's message was clear. You do not move toward the reality you want. You shift into the version of you who already lives it. He taught Aveline the art of timeline immersion. Every morning she was to sit in stillness and whisper, I choose the timeline where everything unfolds in my favor. Then she would summon the feeling of that version of herself, confident, loved, abundant, guided. The more she embodied the frequency, the more physical reality bent around her to match it. In the months that followed, Aveline's life transformed with startling fluidity. Opportunities arrived with perfect timing. People who once overlooked her now sought her out. Obstacles dissolved, synchronicities multiplied. She realized she wasn't becoming her highest self. She was matching the timeline where she already existed. Ancient practice, timeline immersion. Sit quietly with eyes closed. Breathe slowly. Summon the emotional frequency of your desired reality. Feel it saturate your being. Whisper inwardly, I step into the reality aligned with my highest frequency. The timeline will appear beneath your vibration, just as the earth appears beneath your footsteps. Chapter 14. The Alchemy of Non-Interference. In a mountain village surrounded by terraces of golden rice and rivers that shimmered like liquid sunlight, there lived a man named Joran. He was known for his relentless work ethic, always fixing, adjusting, managing, controlling. He believed life responded to effort, and effort alone. But despite his constant striving, his fields produced the least abundant harvests. His relationships were strained. His dreams felt distant. The harder he pushed, the more life resisted him. One day he sought guidance from an ancient hermit named Salin, who lived deep within the bamboo forest. The villagers said Salin had not left the forest in so many years that even the animals saw him as one of their own. When Joran approached Salin's hut, he found the hermit sitting beside a small pond, watching lotus blossoms drift gently across the surface. I have done everything, Joran said desperately. Worked harder than anyone, tried every method, fought for every outcome, but nothing moves in my favor. Teach me what I'm missing. Salin gestured to the pond. Place your hand in the water. Joran complied. Now, Salin said, try to guide the lotus blossoms to the shore. Joran moved his hand, creating waves, pushing water in every direction. The blossoms scattered, drifting even farther away. Salin shook his head. You see, the more you interfere, the more you disrupt the natural flow. He pointed to a single lotus drifting toward the shore without effort. Now remove your hand. Joran did. Instantly, the blossoms began to drift naturally toward the edge, carried by the gentle current. The universe, Salin said, moves like water. It is precise, intelligent, responsive. When you interfere, when you push, force, demand, manipulate, you disrupt the flow meant to bring you what you seek. Joran swallowed. So I should do nothing? No, Salin said gently. Passive inaction is not the answer. Aligned allowance is. He led Joran deeper into the forest, where bamboo stalks swayed in the breeze like silent dancers. Watch, Salin said. As the wind blew, the bamboo bent, never resisting, never snapping. It moved with the current, not against it. The sound of its rustling was soft, harmonious, beautiful. If bamboo were rigid like stone, Salin said, the wind would break it, but because it allows, it survives every storm. Joran felt something shift inside him. Salin continued, life wants to help you. It wants to guide you, but you keep placing your hands in the water, disrupting the very currents carrying your blessings. He handed Joran a small cup filled with sand. Try to hold this sand tightly, Salin instructed. Joran squeezed. The sand spilled through his fingers. Now hold it gently, Salin said. Joran relaxed his hand. The sand stayed perfectly in place. This is the law of non-interference, Salin said. You lose what you grasp too tightly. You repel what you try to control, but you allow what you hold with openness. Joran realized he had been living life with a clenched fist, always trying to force the outcome, accelerate the timing, dictate the path. But life responds not to force, but to resonance, alignment, and trust. When you interfere, Salin said, you tell the universe you do not trust its intelligence, and so it steps back. But when you allow, you invite the universe to move. He explained that every desire has a natural unfolding, a sequence of events far more exquisite than anything the human mind could plan. But most people interrupt the sequence with fear, doubt, impatience, or control. Your interference, Salin said, is the only thing ever blocking your manifestation. He taught Joran a powerful practice. Before taking any action, before making any decision, Joran was to ask himself, am I acting from alignment or from fear? Because aligned action is like a leaf carried by the wind, effortless, guided, precise. But fear-based action is like thrashing in the water, scattering the lotus blossoms. In the months that followed, Joran shifted from forcing to flowing. He stopped micromanaging every detail of his life. He took action only when it felt aligned, clear, and inspired. He allowed silence. He allowed guidance. He allowed ease. And then things began to transform. His fields flourished without extra work. Opportunities came to him unexpectedly. People treated him differently, more openly, more warmly. Life felt lighter. The world felt cooperative. Reality itself felt intelligent. Joran returned to Salin one last time. What changed? He asked softly. Salin smiled. You stopped disrupting the currents carrying your blessings. He added, you began to trust the intelligence of the unseen. Ancient practice, the hands-off ritual. Sit in stillness. Place your hands in your lap, palms open. Whisper inwardly. I release control. I allow alignment. Feel the tension drain from your body. Feel your energy soften. Feel life begin moving toward you, for the universe rearranges everything, the moment you stop interfering, with the path already unfolding in your favor. Chapter 15. The River of Becoming. In the kingdom of Verdun, where rolling hills glowed emerald beneath the sun and silver rivers wove like ribbons across the land, there lived a sculptor named Erin. Her statues were famed across the continent, so lifelike that some whispered they might awaken under moonlight. Yet, despite her skill, Erin carried a quiet sorrow within her. She felt perpetually behind, always chasing dreams that seemed to drift further away the harder she reached for them. She believed that becoming her highest self required relentless shaping, carving, chipping, and forcing, much like sculpting marble. The world taught her to push, to grind, to strive. But every time she forced progress, her spirit cracked a little more. One evening, after a long day in her workshop, she walked to the riverbank near her cottage. The moon cast a shimmering path across the water, and the river's gentle murmur soothed her weary heart. She sat on a fallen tree and closed her eyes, whispering into the quiet. Why does my becoming feel so heavy? The river gurgled softly, almost as if answering. Moments later, an old man dressed in tattered linen approached, carrying a lantern dimly lit by a flickering flame. He nodded respectfully. You look troubled, he said. Troubled hearts are drawn to the river at night. Erin sighed. I feel like I'm failing my destiny. No matter how hard I try, I never become who I'm meant to be. The man sat beside her, resting the lantern between them. Its faint glow danced across their faces. You speak of becoming as though it were a battle, he said. But true becoming is not forged through force. It is revealed through alignment. Erin frowned. Alignment with what? The old man pointed to the river. With what you already are. Erin stared at the shimmering water. Watch, the old man said gently. He picked up a pebble and tossed it upstream. The current immediately pushed it back toward the shore. He then tossed another pebble downstream. It glided effortlessly, carried by the river's natural flow. You see, he said. When you move against your natural current, you struggle. When you move with it, you glide. Erin felt a shiver of recognition. Life is not asking you to force your becoming, he continued. It is asking you to surrender to the current already pulling you toward who you are meant to be. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a small, worn scroll. He unrolled it, revealing a simple line drawn from one edge to the other. The line curved, dipped, and rose, always winding forward despite its twists. "This," he said, "is the river of becoming. It is your life." Erin traced the line with her finger. "But what about the bends, the setbacks, the pain?" The old man nodded. "Every bend strengthens your flow. Every challenge teaches your waters how to navigate. The river never doubts itself when it encounters a stone. It simply flows around it." He dipped his hand into the river and lifted it slowly. Water cascaded between his fingers like liquid stardust. "You have been trying to become by chiseling yourself into shape," he said softly. "But becoming is more like remembering. You are water, not stone." The words struck Erin with surprising force. He added, "When you resist your path, you stagnate. When you trust your path, you move effortlessly toward your destiny. Your soul knows the way. The current of your becoming has already been carved in the unseen." Erin felt tears gathering in her eyes. She whispered, "Then why do I feel so stuck?" "Because you think your destiny needs your effort," he said, "but it needs your permission." A gentle silence settled between them. The old man placed a hand over his heart. "Becoming," he said, "is not a destination. It is the natural unfolding of your essence. You cannot rush a river into the sea, but you can follow its current with grace." He pointed at her chest. "Your becoming is already in motion. The moment you stop gripping the riverbanks with fear, your life will begin to move again." Erin watched the river, seeing her reflection shimmer and soften. Something deep within her shifted. She realized she had been clinging to an image of who she thought she needed to be, rather than allowing the truth of who she was to rise. She turned to ask the old man his name, but he was gone. Only the lantern remained, glowing brighter than before, as if fueled by her newfound clarity. Erin walked home with a lightness she had not felt in years. She did not pick up her chisel the next morning. Instead, she sat with her clay and allowed her hands to move as they wished, without force, without expectation, without fear, and the sculpture that emerged was unlike anything she had ever created. It flowed with grace, depth, and life. People traveled from distant lands to see it, claiming it held an energy that awakened something within them. Erin finally understood. Becoming is not an achievement. It is a remembering, a surrender, a flow. She allowed the river to carry her, and by doing so, her life transformed. Ancient practice. The current invocation. Sit quietly with your eyes closed. Place your hand on your heart. Imagine a river flowing through you. Whisper inwardly, "I release resistance. I allow my becoming." Feel the current awaken. Feel your soul begin to move, for the river of becoming never stops flowing. Only the mind forgets to get in. Chapter 16. The Invisible Contract of Alignment. Beyond the misty borders of the kingdom of Lysoria stood a towering stone bridge known as the Passage of Echoes. Travelers crossing it claimed to hear whispers, some comforting, others unsettling. Legends said the bridge did not echo voices. It echoed truth. One such traveler was a woman named Rena. She had spent years repeating the same painful patterns: betrayal, disappointment, self-doubt, misalignment. Her relationships crumbled. Her intentions fell apart. Her dreams dissolved before they could take shape. Rena believed she was cursed, but truthfully, she was repeating an invisible contract she had never consciously signed. When she reached the Passage of Echoes, exhausted and heart-sore, she stepped onto the first stone. Immediately, the air around her vibrated, and an eerie whisper rose from the depths. "You walk the path you've agreed to walk." Rena froze. "Who's there?" The whisper replied, "Your alignment, your agreements, your unseen contracts." Terrified yet compelled, Rena crossed the bridge slowly. With each step, memories surfaced. Moments she ignored her intuition, agreements she made out of fear, patterns she accepted without questioning. At the center of the bridge, she encountered an elderly woman cloaked in silver, sitting calmly as though she had been waiting for Renner. "You've arrived," the woman said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Who are you?" Renner asked. "I am the keeper of contracts," the woman replied. "The unseen ones, the ones you make through vibration, not words." Renner shivered. "I never agreed to suffering." The keeper shook her head gently. "Not with your voice," she said, "but with your energy. Every fear becomes a contract. Every belief becomes a signature. Every wound becomes a vow." She traced her finger along the stone. Patterns of light emerged, spirals, sigils, and ancient markings. "These are the contracts you've lived by," she said, "not because you wanted them, but because you aligned with them." Renner looked closer. She saw glowing words. "I am unworthy. I am alone. Love leaves me. Life is struggle." Her knees buckled. "I didn't mean these," she whispered. "Intent does not form your contracts," the keeper said softly. "Frequency does." The keeper raised her hand, and the markings shifted into new forms, lighter, gentler. "You can rewrite these contracts," she said, "but only through alignment, through choosing a new signature." Renner wiped her tears. "How?" The keeper led her to the edge of the bridge, where the mist parted to reveal a vast field of shimmering threads, millions of glowing lines connecting possibilities, people, moments, and futures. "These are the agreements your soul can choose," the keeper said, "but you must align with the one you desire." She pointed toward a radiant thread glowing brighter than the rest. "This one belongs to who you truly are," she said, "but you have not stepped into it, because you keep renewing old contracts unconsciously." Renner felt her heart ache. "Show me how to choose differently." The keeper smiled. "Step into alignment," she said, "and the old contracts dissolve." She instructed Renner to place her hand over her heart. "Feel your true frequency," she said. "Not your wounds, not your fears, your essence." Renner inhaled deeply. Something ancient stirred within her, an inner knowing she had long silenced. A warmth spread through her chest, a clarity dawned, a new signature emerged, the invisible contract of alignment. Light pulsed beneath her hand. The old markings on the bridge cracked and faded. The glowing thread of her true path brightened, rising like dawn breaking after a long night. "You see," the keeper said, "you were never cursed. You were simply aligned with what you did not want." Renner felt herself exhale years of heaviness. "Your life," the keeper continued, "is not shaped by fate. It is shaped by agreements, energetic agreements you can rewrite at any moment." Renner took one step forward. The bridge shimmered. The air lightened. Echoes turned soft, harmonious. She was rewriting her unseen contracts, choosing from alignment rather than fear, from truth rather than wounds. When she reached the far side of the passage of echoes, the keeper's voice drifted after her like a blessing. "When you align with who you truly are, the universe must follow. The old contracts lose their power. The new ones build themselves." Renner walked into her new life with certainty she had never felt before. She knew you do not escape your old agreements by running. You dissolve them by aligning with the truth of who you're becoming. Ancient practice, the rewriting ritual. Close your eyes, place your hand on your heart. Whisper inwardly, "I release all contracts made from fear." Then affirm softly, "I align with my highest truth." Feel your energy recalibrate. Feel old patterns crumble. Feel new agreements form in the unseen. For every timeline, every blessing, every destiny awaits the moment you choose. Alignment over fear. Chapter 17. The Whispered Currency. In the thriving city of Marinth, where bustling markets overflowed with spices and jewel-colored fabrics, lived a woman named Elira. Though she was skilled at her craft, creating intricate glass ornaments illuminated from within, she always struggled with money. Every time she earned coin, unexpected expenses pulled it from her grasp. Every time wealth approached, it slipped through shadowy cracks she could not see. She began to believe that abundance was a river she could admire but never reach. One day, While wandering through the market searching for cheaper materials, Illyra passed an old merchant seated behind a stall of luminous crystals. He watched her with eyes ancient and knowing. "You carry a heaviness," he said softly, "a tension around money that binds your flow." Illyra sighed. "I work hard, but money keeps leaving me." The merchant nodded. "Because money responds not to effort, but to energy. And your energy whispers a language you do not hear." He invited her to sit. As she lowered herself onto a cushion, he placed 2 bowls in front of her, one empty, the other filled with golden sand. "Think of money," he said, "and stir the first bowl with your finger." Illyra thought of her worries: rent due soon, debts awaiting payment, the fear of not having enough. She stirred the empty bowl. Immediately the sand in the second bowl recoiled, shifting away from her finger as though repelled by an unseen force. Illyra gasped. "Why did it move away?" "Because money hears your fear," he said. "Fear is a repelling force. Worry signals lack, and lack pushes abundance away." Her eyes widened. "Now," he continued, "think not of money leaving you, but of money circulating through your life, like breath, like wind, like tide." Illyra inhaled deeply and imagined money as a gentle river flowing through her with ease. Her heartbeat softened, her shoulders relaxed. "Good," the merchant whispered. "Now stir the bowl again." This time, the golden sand drew toward her finger, gathering like iron filings pulled by a magnet. Tears filled Illyra's eyes. "I never realized." He nodded gently. "This is the whispered currency of the universe. Money does not respond merely to need. It responds to the vibration you emit toward it." He placed a gold coin in her palm. "Money," he said, "is a mirror. It does not judge you. It does not define you. It reflects you. When you feel unworthy, it retreats. When you feel desperate, it escapes. When you feel guilt, it hides. But when you feel appreciation, trust, and openness, it moves toward you like a loyal friend." Illyra whispered, "How do I change my relationship with it?" The merchant lit a small lantern and held the flame up to her face. "First," he said, "you must understand the sacred truth. Money is not material first, it is energetic. Before it enters your hands, it enters your vibration." He told her the story of a young farmer named Taylor who spent years battling drought and poverty. He believed wealth came from harvest alone. But one day, an elder told him to give thanks to his fields before planting, to bless his crops with gratitude, and to treat abundance as already present. At first, Taylor resisted, but eventually he softened. His energy shifted. He planted with gratitude rather than fear, and that year his crops grew taller, brighter, and more plentiful than any season before. "It was not the soil that changed," the merchant said. "It was his frequency toward abundance." He leaned closer to Illyra. "Your glasswork glows beautifully because you infuse it with devotion, not desperation. Money, too, responds to devotion." Illyra frowned. "Devotion to what?" "To flow," he said. "To trust, to circulation." He guided her through the marketplace, stopping near a fountain. Coins glittered at its bottom. "Observe," he said. "People toss coins into the fountain with wishes, but the coins do not stay idle. They circulate. They nourish the city. They move." A breeze carried water droplets to Illyra's skin. She closed her eyes. "Money flows to those who flow with money," he said. "Not from hoarding, not from fear, but from understanding it is energy, eager to move." He placed the gold coin back into her hand. "When you receive," he said, "feel gratitude, pure, unforced gratitude. When you give," he continued, "feel abundance, knowing more always returns. When you spend," he added, "feel trust, knowing circulation is the essence of prosperity." He placed his palm over hers. "Change the whisper of your energy," he said, "and money will change its path toward you." That night, Illyra lit a single candle in her workshop and held the coin close to her heart. For the first time in her life, she felt abundance not as a distant dream, but as a warm presence already circling her. Over the following weeks, her energy shifted. She no longer feared spending. She no longer clung to every coin. She created her art from joy, not survival. And the universe responded with startling accuracy. Customers began seeking her without explanation. A wealthy traveler commissioned a dozen pieces. Even her debts dissolved effortlessly through unexpected opportunities. The whispered currency had changed its direction. Illyra whispered into the night, "Abundance is an energy, and I am aligned with it." Ancient practice, the currency of light. Hold a coin or object symbolizing abundance. Close your eyes. Whisper inwardly, "Money flows through me like light. Feel gratitude rise. Feel fear melt. Feel circulation begin, for the universe does not respond to your bank account. It responds to the whisper of your energy." Chapter 18. Relationships as Resonance. In the fog-kissed village of Thallenmoor, where houses stood on stilts above shimmering lagoons, lived a man named Dorian. Though kind-hearted and generous, he struggled endlessly with relationships. Friendships faded, lovers drifted away. Even co-workers kept their distance. He believed something was wrong with him. One chilly morning, burdened by loneliness, Dorian sought answers from an eccentric old cartographer named Neris, who was rumored to map not the land, but the heart. Neris greeted him with mismatched socks, wild silver hair, and a grin too wide for his face. "You've come because your relationships echo your wounds," the old man said matter-of-factly. Dorian blinked. He had spoken no words. Neris waved him inside his cluttered shack, where maps covered every wall, maps made of starlight, ink, feathers, and even pressed flowers. "These maps," Neris said, "chart vibrations, frequencies, emotional currents." He tapped a map pulsing with faint golden light. "This is resonance." He spun around, pointing at Dorian's chest. "You attract not what you want," he said, "but what you are resonating." Dorian sank onto a stool. "But I want love. Why do I attract rejection?" "Because you vibrate the fear of losing love," Neris replied. "Fear is magnetic. Pain is magnetic. Unworthiness is magnetic. Every unresolved emotion hums with a frequency, and frequencies call matching frequencies." He placed a tuning fork into Dorian's hand. "Strike it," he said. Dorian did. The fork vibrated with a soft tone. Neris lifted an identical fork. Without touching it, the second fork began to vibrate. "You see," Neris said quietly, "resonance. One vibration awakens its twin." He moved closer, his voice suddenly soft and compassionate. "If your heart carries old wounds, abandonment, betrayal, loneliness, those wounds hum like tuning forks, and they call forward people who resonate with them." Dorian swallowed. "So, my relationships aren't failing. They're matching me?" Neris nodded. "Exactly." He poured tea into 2 mismatched cups. "You cannot outwish your vibration," he said. "You can only outgrow it." To demonstrate, he guided Dorian outside to the shore of the lagoon. The water was perfectly still, reflecting their faces like a mirror. "This," Neris said, "is how the universe mirrors you." He tossed a stone into the water. Ripples spread outward. "These ripples," he said, "are your emotional field. People see you through these ripples. They respond to what your vibration announces long before your words are spoken." He placed a hand on Dorian's back. "Your loneliness," he said, "is calling lonely hearts. Your fear of abandonment is calling people who cannot stay. Your silence is calling those who do not listen." Dorian trembled. "Then how do I change the resonance?" Neris grinned like a mischievous fox. "Ah, now that is the cartography of the soul." He instructed Dorian to place a hand on his chest. "Feel your emotional state," he said, "not your thoughts, your vibration." At first, Dorian felt a heaviness, a deep ache, a fear of not being enough. Tears welled in his eyes. "Good," Neris whispered. "Recognition is the first step. Now, soften." Dorian breathed deeply. He let the ache rise. He let the fear be seen. He let the wounds uncoil from his ribs. And something remarkable happened. The water before them settled, its reflection softening. The moment you tend to your inner resonance, Neris said, your outer world begins to shift. He explained that relationships are not random meetings of fate, they are frequency interactions. Healing the internal resonance draws new people, new dynamics, new possibilities. A resonant heart, Neris said, attracts resonant connections. To show him the truth, Neris handed him a bouquet of wildflowers. These bloom in harsh conditions, he said, not because of the soil, but because of their inner harmony. They vibrate resilience, so the world responds with nourishment. Dorian understood. His relationships were not broken. His resonance was simply calling what matched his internal melody. Over the following months, Dorian practiced the art of emotional tuning. He sat with his heart each morning. He whispered compassion into his wounds. He softened old fears. He breathed love into spaces where love had never been allowed. And slowly his resonance changed. New friendships blossomed. A tender romance appeared. People gravitated toward him with warmth. His world began reflecting a frequency of worthiness, not fear. He realized that relationships were mirrors, and he had finally changed the reflection. Ancient practice, the resonance reset. Sit quietly, place your hand upon your heart. Whisper inwardly, I tune my heart to love. Feel the vibration soften. Feel your emotional field recalibrate. Feel the universe adjusting its mirrors. For relationships do not shape your resonance. Your resonance shapes every relationship you attract. Chapter 19. The Dimmer Switch of Belief. In the twilight-washed village of Oceanport, where lanterns floated on the harbor waters like drifting stars, lived a candlemaker named Lysandra. Her candles were sought across kingdoms for their warm glow and soothing scent, yet she held a secret fear that her light and her life burned unsteadily. For Lysandra possessed a peculiar gift. She could see belief the way others saw color. When villagers asked her for guidance, she did not read their palms or cards. She read the brightness of their inner flame. Some burned steady and strong. Others flickered with doubt. And some, like her own, dimmed unpredictably. The truth she could not escape was this. Her belief was inconsistent, bright one moment, shadowed the next. And reality, ever loyal, reflected her inconsistency with uncanny precision. One evening, as she sat beside the harbor, watching the lanterns rise and fall with the tide, an old sailor joined her. His skin was tanned by sun and salt, his eyes pale as sea foam. You look like someone who lights the world, he said, yet fears her own flame. Lysandra laughed softly. I believe in my dreams sometimes, and other times it feels like belief slips through my fingers. The sailor nodded knowingly. Then you suffer from the dimmer switch. The what? The dimmer switch of belief, he said. A silent mechanism that weakens your signal to the universe. When your belief rises, reality brightens. When your belief dims, so does your world. Not because life is fickle, but because your vibration keeps shifting. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a small brass lantern. The wick was unlit. He handed it to her. Try lighting it, he said. She struck a match, igniting the wick. The flame flickered, brightened, and burned steadily. Now, he whispered, doubt your ability to keep it lit. A strange chill passed through her. The flame wavered, dimming until it sputtered nearly out. Her eyes widened. Now, he said gently, believe with calm certainty that the flame is strong. Lysandra closed her eyes and breathed deeply. As her belief steadied, the flame brightened once more. You see, he said, the flame listens not to your effort, but to your certainty. Lysandra stared at the lantern in awe. Is belief really that powerful? The sailor nodded. Belief is the switch that tells the universe, yes, this is real for me. But when your belief wavers, reality cannot anchor itself. It flickers, just as this flame does. He leaned closer. Most people think belief is something they need in intense bursts, moments of inspiration, prayer, or confidence. But belief is not measured in height, it is measured in consistency. He pointed to the harbor where floating lanterns bobbed gently in the tide. The lantern that shines brightest is not the one lit most passionately, but the one that stays lit. Then he told her a story. There was once a lighthouse keeper who tended the great coastal tower alone. On stormy nights, he would grow anxious and overwork the light, polishing, adjusting, bolting, cleaning in frantic bursts. The flame burned bright for minutes, then dimmed again because of his frantic interference. One evening, an elder visited the lighthouse and said, "Stop chasing brilliance, tend the flame steadily." The keeper listened. Instead of frantic bursts of activity followed by exhaustion, he tended the flame calmly each day. The light grew not brighter but steadier. And because of that, ships at sea found their way home with greater ease. Lysandra felt tears prick her eyes. She finally understood. Belief is not a firework, it is a candle, and candles require gentle, consistent tending. The sailor guided her through the belief-steadying ritual, an ancient practice almost forgotten. "Hold your desire as though it is already aflame," he said. "Do not demand it to blaze, simply keep it from going out." He instructed her to close her eyes and speak softly. "I choose steady belief." As she repeated these words, she felt an internal warmth, a subtle, steady glow rising within her. Over the next few months, Lysandra transformed her approach to life. She no longer tried to believe hard. She chose to believe consistently. When doubt crept in, she whispered, "I adjust my inner light to steady." And like a lantern held in gentle hands, her belief began to burn with unwavering clarity. As her belief steadied, so did her reality. Her business flourished. Unexpected opportunities arrived. People traveled from distant lands, seeking her wisdom. Most beautifully of all, Lysandra realized something profound. Consistency is the language of the universe. Steady belief is the signature of manifestation. The sailor eventually sailed away, leaving behind only the brass lantern he gifted her. But Lysandra carried the true treasure in her heart, the understanding that your belief is the dimmer switch of your destiny. Steady it and your whole world brightens. Ancient practice. The flame of steady belief. Sit quietly. Imagine a candle flame in your heart. Whisper, "I keep my belief steady." Feel the flame stabilize. Feel your frequency align. Feel the universe listen, for the world does not respond to your brightest moments. It responds to your steady ones. Chapter 20. The Spacious Now. In the vast, bustling city of Carinth, where stone towers kissed the clouds and marketplaces buzzed with endless movement, lived a merchant named Althea. She was known for her ambition, always reaching for the next goal, the next milestone, the next triumph. Her life was a constant race toward tomorrow, yet no matter how much she achieved, satisfaction eluded her. Joy was always one step ahead. Peace was always waiting just after the next task. Fulfillment lived in a horizon that kept retreating. One evening, drained from weeks of unending pursuit, Althea stumbled into the quiet garden outside the Temple of Stillness. There, she found an elderly monk tending a single flower growing in the shadow of a great stone pillar. The monk looked up at her with warm eyes. "You carry tomorrow on your back," he said. Althea frowned. "I'm just trying to build a better life." The monk shook his head gently. "You are postponing a better life." She felt her heart tighten. "What do you mean?" The monk lifted the single flower, a delicate white blossom that grew despite the heavy stone's shade. "This flower does not bloom tomorrow," he said. "It blooms now, not because the conditions are perfect, but because it inhabits the spacious now." Althea felt a flicker of frustration. "I don't have time to be still. There is too much to do." "Then you are living in a prison of your own making," the monk replied. "Time is not your captor. Your attention is." He invited her to sit beside the flower. "You believe your manifestations live in the future," he said. "So the universe keeps placing them in the future." The words struck her. She whispered, "How do I bring them into the present?" He smiled. "By entering the spacious now." He explained that most people live in narrow slices of time, thinking constantly of what comes next, what must be done, what hasn't yet happened. Their attention becomes constricted, and creation cannot breathe within them. The present moment, he said, is infinite. But humans squeeze it into something small with their worry, their striving, their anticipation. He touched the soil around the flower. This soil does not rush. This flower does not chase. This moment does not seek another moment. It is whole. He asked Althea to close her eyes and take a single breath. But a true breath, not rushed, not shallow, not stolen from the next moment. "Feel this breath," he whispered. "Not the next one, not the last one, just this one." As she breathed, something extraordinary happened. The noise of the city softened. The pressure in her chest eased. Time expanded, stretching itself open like a vast meadow. The monk whispered, "You have entered the spacious now." Althea felt tears forming. "It feels endless." He nodded. "This is the only place where creation lives. Not in your rushing, not in your striving, in your presence." He guided her deeper. "When you worry about the future, you send a vibration of absence. When you dwell in the past, you emit a vibration of stagnation. But when you inhabit the now, your energy becomes magnetic." He explained that the present moment is the only point where reality can shift. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, only now. Your manifestation, he said, is not waiting in the distance. It is waiting in the spacious now, where you are aligned, receptive, and free from time. To illustrate, he asked her to hold out her hands. He placed the white flower in her palms. "This flower," he said, "is what you have been chasing, not the flower itself, but the feeling of joy, peace, fulfillment." He leaned closer. "The moment you stop chasing the feeling finds you." Suddenly, Althea understood. Her entire life had been lived in the future tense. She had placed happiness, success, and peace somewhere beyond the horizon. And the universe, obedient as always, kept them there. But the now was spacious, alive, creative, full. When she stepped fully into it, she felt her entire frequency shift. Her desires felt close, possibilities sparkled. The world no longer felt like a field she had to conquer, but a garden she was already standing inside. In the weeks that followed, Althea practiced entering the spacious now. She breathed deeply before each decision. She paused before rushing into action. She inhabited each moment fully, and life responded. Customers arrived at perfect times. Opportunities unfolded effortlessly. She slept better, laughed more, and felt abundance circling her without her chasing it. She realized something profound. You do not manifest from the future. You manifest from fullness in the present. Your power lives only in the now, and the now, when opened, is infinite. Ancient practice, the spacious breath. Sit comfortably. Take one slow breath. Feel it fully, its rise, its fall, its softness. Whisper inwardly, "Only this moment is real." Let time widen. Let pressure melt. Let the spacious now reveal its abundance. For the universe enters your life, not through rushing into the future, but through opening the doorway of the present moment. Chapter 21. The State That Bends Probability. Far beyond the northern plains lay the kingdom of Elion, a land known for its shimmering auroras that danced across the night sky like celestial rivers. Travelers claimed the lights responded to emotion, brightening with joy, deepening with sorrow, shifting with intention. Most dismissed this as fantasy. But the mystics of Elion knew a deeper truth. The auroras were mirrors of consciousness. They revealed the state that bends probability. In this land lived a quiet scholar named Thalen. While others spent their lives chasing fortune, love, status, or adventure, Thalen chased something far more elusive: understanding. He believed there existed a state, an energetic orientation that could collapse possibilities into form, bending the probabilities of the universe with graceful ease. But despite his knowledge, Thalen struggled to find this state. He felt it in fleeting moments, those rare instants where life aligned effortlessly, where desires manifested without effort, where the world seemed to move in harmony around him. But like a dream slipping through his fingers upon waking, the state dissolved before he could grasp it. One winter's night, frustrated by his inability to hold the feeling, Thalen climbed Elion's highest ridge to watch the auroras alone. The sky shimmered with emerald and violet light, pulsing as though breathing. As he stood wrapped in furs, an elderly woman approached, her cloak adorned with runes of ancient knowledge. She walked with the grace of someone who did not disturb snow when she stepped upon it. "You seek the state," she said gently, as though reading his heart. Thalen bowed. "Yes, but it slips away. How do I hold it?" The woman's eyes glimmered with knowing. "You do not hold the state, you become it." She motioned toward the dancing lights. "The auroras do not choose when to shine, they shine when conditions align. So too does the state that bends probability activate when you align." Thalen frowned. "What is this state exactly?" She touched her heart. "It is the state of inevitability." The wind stilled, the auroras shifted. "Inevitability," she repeated, "is the frequency where doubt cannot survive. It is the emotional certainty that what you desire is already yours, not because you willed it, but because no other outcome could exist." Thalen felt a warmth bloom within him. "Come," she said, leading him toward a frozen lake. The surface reflected the auroras like a portal to another world. "Stand on the ice," she instructed. Thalen obeyed. "Now," she said, "choose a desire." He chose one silently. "Good," she said. "Now imagine the universe as this frozen lake. Every possibility is beneath the surface. You do not need to create the fish under the ice. You need only open the right hole." She tapped the ice with her staff. A small circular opening appeared, glowing faintly. "This opening," she said, "is your state of being, not your effort, not your thoughts, your state." She walked behind him. "Now close your eyes. Feel what it would be like if your desire were already here. Not imagined, not hoped. Felt." Thalen inhaled sharply. He summoned the emotion, not the thought of completion, fullness, arrival. The ice beneath him warmed. A vibration hummed through the frozen lake. And then, from the glowing opening, a flash of light burst upward. Thalen opened his eyes in shock. "What was that?" The woman smiled. "A probability bending to your frequency." She explained. "Most people try to manifest from desire alone, but desire signals not here yet. They try to manifest from intention alone, but intention without alignment scatters like dust. They try using willpower, but willpower pushes against the universe. The only true catalyst is the state where you feel the outcome is already done." Thalen whispered, "But how do I stay in that state?" "You do not stay," she said softly. "You return, again and again, until the return becomes your home." She placed a hand upon his chest. "When your emotional signature becomes inevitability, reality bends to match. Probability rearranges itself, outcomes reorganize, the world shifts." She gestured toward the sky. The auroras pulsed in perfect rhythm with Thalen's breath. "The universe does not respond to what you desire," she said. "It responds to who you are being." She handed him a small crystal shaped like a teardrop. "When doubt rises," she said, "hold this. Let it remind you of the feeling of inevitability. Not effort, not force. Feeling." Then she began to walk away. Thalen called after her, "Wait! Who are you?" She turned briefly, the auroras swirling behind her. "I am one who remembers," she said, "and now so are you." Over the following months, Thalen practiced entering the state of inevitability. At first, the feeling came in brief sparkles, moments of resonance, clarity, inner warmth. But gradually, those sparkles grew into steady flames, and when they did, his life reshaped itself with startling speed. Doors opened, opportunities aligned, paths unfolded, desires materialized. He realized that reality had never been rigid. It had always been fluid, waiting for him to anchor into the state that bent its probabilities. He wrote in his journal, "I do not manifest by effort. I manifest by entering the version of myself for whom my desires are already inevitable." Ancient practice, the inevitability invocation. Sit with hand over heart, summon the emotion of your fulfilled desire. Whisper inwardly, "This is already mine in the unseen." Feel the shift, feel the certainty. Feel probability bending. For when your being carries inevitability, the universe has no option but to comply. Chapter 22. When everything arranges at once. At the edge of the world, in a quiet coastal town where mountains met the sea, lived a woman named Mira who had spent her life collecting fragments of hope. Not physical objects, but moments, small synchronicities she mistook for coincidence, brief glimpses of possibility, whispers of alignment. Yet for years, nothing fully materialized. Her desires seemed suspended in the air, always forming, never arriving. She often wondered why life teased her with signs but withheld the outcomes. One dawn, feeling defeated, Mira walked to the highest cliff overlooking the ocean. The tide glistened like molten glass, and the horizon stretched endlessly before her. "What am I doing wrong?" she whispered to the wind. A voice behind her replied, "You are trying to complete the puzzle before all the pieces are on the table." Startled, Mira turned to see an elderly man leaning on a driftwood staff. His hair was white as snow, but his eyes gleamed with youth, deep, knowing, and full of mischief. "Who are you?" she asked. "An observer of arrangements," he said. "And you are impatient." Mira sighed. "My manifestations almost appear, but then nothing." The man chuckled. "Ah, you have been expecting results before the convergence." He gestured toward the sea. "Watch." As the sun rose, dozens of seabirds took flight simultaneously, first one, then another, then entire flocks. They formed spirals, arcs, and patterns across the sky, moving as though obeying a shared intelligence. "That," the old man said, "is convergence, separate elements aligning into one perfect moment." He continued, "You want your manifestation to happen piece by piece, but the universe works differently. It arranges everything at once, then reveals the result in a single moment." Mira felt a spark of curiosity. "But why does it take so long?" "Because alignment must happen across dimensions you cannot see," he said. "People, timing, opportunities, energy, inner shifts, all must synchronize." He tapped his staff on the ground. "When you see nothing happening, everything is happening." He told her a story. There was once a man who planted a rare seed deep in the earth. He watered it for years, seeing no sprout. Every day he doubted, questioned, worried, but the seed was growing, just downward, strengthening its roots. When the sprout finally emerged, it grew 50 feet in a single season, because the unseen work had already been done. "That," the man said, "is how your dreams grow." Mira sat silently, letting the truth settle. "You have mistaken delay for denial," he said. "You have mistaken silence for absence. You have mistaken unseen orchestration for nothingness." His voice softened. "You are closer than you think. Your universe is arranging everything, but it cannot reveal the final form until all pieces fit." He reached into his satchel and handed her a wooden puzzle box. "Open it." Mira tried, twisting, pressing, pulling, but nothing moved. "It won't open," she said. "Not yet," he replied, "because the hidden mechanism only unlocks when all its pieces are aligned." He held the box in his hands, rotated it gently, then pressed a single hidden panel. The box snapped open instantly. "The universe works this way," he said. "Nothing moves until everything moves." Mira exhaled slowly. "So what do I do?" "Stop watching the pot," he said. "It is boiling beneath the surface." He placed his hand over her heart. "Your only task is to stay aligned long enough for convergence to occur. Your vibration is the signal. Your trust is the anchor." He stepped away, but before disappearing into the mist, he added, "When everything is ready, your life will change all at once, not gradually, not piece by piece, all at once." And so Mira waited, not with impatience, but with presence, with openness, with trust. Weeks passed, then days, then moments, and one morning, like dawn breaking after a long night, everything rearranged at once. The job offer, the relationship, the opportunity, the clarity, the fulfillment. They did not come separately. They arrived like a wave, synchronized in perfect timing. Mira wept, not from surprise, but from recognition. The universe had been arranging everything behind the scenes, waiting for her to remain steady long enough for the convergence. she whispered into the morning light. It was never delayed. It was orchestrating. Ancient practice, the convergence breath. Close your eyes, inhale softly, whisper inwardly, everything is aligning now. Exhale, feel patience, feel trust, feel the unseen gears turning, for manifestation does not trickle, it converges. And when it does, your entire life shifts in a single breath.